Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the flower-dusted sandals of a Babylonian baker, drifting back almost 4,000 years to a world where your job begins before sunrise, your hands are never clean, and your bread might just end up as an offering to a god or stolen by a goat. You're here for a gentle, sleepy journey, but fair warning, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this bakery. Between the heat, the heavy grinding stones, and the possibility of accidentally offending a deity by shaping a ceremonial loaf. Yeah, stick to the fantasy version. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and comment where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious how far this sleepy bread journey will travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on the fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The city is still yawning when you step out into the dust-laced glow of Babylon's early morning. The sun is a pale coin, just brushing the rooftops of mud brick homes, but already the smell is there warm, nutty, and rising on the breeze. You follow it like a sleepwalker, drawn past rows of worn stalls and faded painted walls, toward a narrow alley where firelight flickers and voices mumble like an ancient lullaby. You duck under a wooden lintel and into the bakery. Inside, the air is thick and alive, not unpleasant, just full of flour, of yeast, of warm breath and sweaty work. A thin film of fine white powder coats the ground like ancient snowfall, and you find your toes sliding slightly in your sandals. There are people everywhere, young boys rolling dough into balls with practiced flicks, older women shouting instructions over their shoulders. A man with arms the width of your legs needs a massive mound of dough, though rhythmically you suspect he might be keeping time with his heartbeat. You wonder how long it took him to develop 4 arms like a pair of overbaked loaves. You stand there, blinking. You are clearly in the way. Someone hands you a lump of warm, sticky dough. No words, just a look that says, "You're here now. Help." You squish it between your palms, tentatively. It single quotes S. alive, bubbling faintly. You try not to panic. This bakery, like many in Babylon, is a family operation, but not in the modern sense of let's open a cute cafe with our savings. More like, your family has to do this because bread is a basic economic unit. It's not just food, it's payment. Soldiers are paid in bread. Workers, priests, scribes, they all depend on it. If you mess up, people don't get paid, including you. So, when someone barks instructions and points toward a wide, soot-smudged work table, you go, you're not here to start a revolution. You're here to stay out of trouble and maybe not get flour in your eyes. The tools are simple: wooden paddles, shallow bowls carved from dark, worn clay, a fat pottery jar of something suspiciously sticky, probably fermented date mash. You dip a finger in. Immediate regret. It tastes like syrup left in the sun for a month. It might be yeast, or it might be a mistake. Historians still debate how ancient bakers truly understood fermentation. Some believe it was all intentional. Others think early bread was half divine accident. It's likely no one explained the science of microbial colonies to these bakers, and yet, day after day, they made it work. Someone sneezes into the flour bin. Nobody blinks. You're given a wooden scraper and assigned to the corner, told to cut flattened dough into equal strips for what you overhear someone call tukel, a type of sacred loaf. You guess. Each piece must be identical, same size, same weight, same number of perforations poked in with a carved bone pin. It's bread, but also ritual, and someone is very much watching. The heat increases as the ovens begin to roar awake behind you. Giant, beehive-shaped tanners embedded in the far wall. They glow red inside, open-mouthed and hungry. The air smells like smoke and sweat and browned wheat. You glance down at your flour-caked fingers and realize you're already starting to look the part. A boy, no older than 10, zooms past with a tray of flat rounds balanced like a magician. His foot hits a slick of spilled barley mash and he skids violently sideways. You wince, but he recovers, without losing a single loaf. Everyone cheers. Someone throws him a fig, probably breakfast. Over in the corner. A girl slaps dough discs onto the inner walls of the oven with an expert thwack. They stick instantly, puffing slightly, edges already darkening. She doesn't look, just moves on to the next. 1, 2, 3. Thwack, thwack, thwack. There's a rhythm to this place. A quiet, ancient beat that syncs up with your breath the longer you stay. You begin to feel it in your shoulders, in the solace of your feet. It's not a job anymore, it's a dance. You and the dough, the fire and the flour. You wonder if they ever get tired of it, if they ever dream of a life where they don't wake up smelling like yeast. But then again, there's something deeply comforting about it too. The older man next to you elbows your ribs lightly. First time, he mutters, grinning with 3 remaining teeth. You nod. He jerks his chin toward a rack of finished loaves, some round, some long, some scored with elaborate patterns. Try the dark one, not too burnt. You bite in. It's chewy, sour, a little smoky, and delicious. Behind you, a goat wanders in, steals half a flatbread off the cooling rack, and trots off before anyone can stop it. Nobody reacts, apparently. This is normal. You take another bite, and the sound of the city fades just a little. The shouting vendors, the creaking carts, the calls to prayer. In here, it's warm and human and messy and real. The sun has officially risen, sneaking golden light through a crack in the rear wall. Dust motes drift through it like lazy fireflies. Your hands are now completely white. Someone hands you another lump of dough. You're already better at this than you were an hour ago. And outside, Babylon stirs. The streets fill. The market's open. And somewhere nearby, someone eats a loaf you help shape. It's a strange kind of immortality, isn't it? Bread, just flour, water, and fire. But it's fed empires. And here you are, elbows deep in the start of it all. You're sticky, not metaphorically, physically, impossibly, irrevocably sticky. The dough clings to your forearms like a needy toddler, and someone has definitely spilled honey on the back of your tunic. But before you can figure out where that happened, or why a cat just walked across the flour bin without anyone caring, you're being tugged out of the bakery by a skinny teen with callous hands and no explanation. Apparently, you're off to get the grain. You blink in the morning sun as the scent of fresh bread fades behind you, replaced by a wind that smells like river reeds and wet clay. Babylon is wide awake now, potters banging their wheels, priests mumbling through incense smoke, children shrieking as they chase each other with sticks that are probably meant for something sacred. You pick your way through the noise, following the boy who only occasionally glances back to make sure you haven't wandered off. His pace is steady, but relaxed. He knows these streets like you know your own kitchen counter. And you, despite your flour-dusted confusion, are officially part of the supply chain now. You reach the docks. The Euphrates is spread out before you, like a great brown ribbon, rolling lazy and wide. Its banks lined with cargo boats that look like floating baskets. This river is Babylon's beating heart, not just for transportation, but for irrigation, for bathing, for offerings, for gossip. If a loaf of bread appears on a palace plate, there's a good chance it started with grain that came from this river. You're handed a basket empty, for now, and pointed toward a small cluster of men unloading sacks from a reed boat. They're arguing about something you don't understand, which seems to be their preferred method of communication. One sack rips open mid-lift, and barley spills like golden confetti across the dock. Nobody panics. A few passing children scramble to scoop it up. One man just sighs and pulls a string from his tunic to patch the hole, grumbling something that sounds like the gods drink wine. But we mop grain. The grain itself is beautiful, plump, sun-colored, and surprisingly clean. Most of it is barley, the staple of Babylonian diets. But there are sacks of emmer too, and even some rare hard wheat that's been traded down from the north. Each type has its purpose. Barley for everyday loaves. Emmer for softer, fluffier bread. Wheat, that's for the rich, the priests, and the gods. You help carry the sacks not very well, but enough to feel your shoulders remind you they were not designed for ancient labor. The boy smirks. He seems amused by your suffering, but in a friendly way. Along the river, women scoop water into clay jugs, balancing them on their hips with supernatural ease. You're told the bakery uses water from a private well, but the river water is sometimes used for boiling, soaking, or on unlucky days, cleaning up after a goat-related disaster. As you wait for the last of the grain to be measured and recorded on a small clay tablet, because of course there's paperwork, you sit down on the edge of the dock and dangle your feet over the side. The river gurgles beneath you, warm and slow. You can see fish just under the surface, darting like silver shadows. A dragonfly lands on your knee. You decide not to move. It's the most peace you've had since that moment someone shoved dough into your hands at sunrise. It's strange to think that this water, this river, is part of every bite of bread in the city. The grains grew with it, the dough swelled with it. The ashes of the ovens hiss when it touches them. There's a small shrine nearby, just a stone slab, half sunk into mud with dried bread offerings crumbled across it, probably to Enki, god of water and wisdom, or it be another. The lines between gods and bread get blurry here. You're told that during drought years, some bakers whisper blessings into the dough, praying the river won't abandon them. Whether it listens or not, historians still wonder if these rituals were born from desperation, devotion, or thus habit passed down until no one remembered why. You climb back to your feet, slightly damp and now oddly sun-warmed, just in time to help load the grain onto a waiting donkey cart. This donkey has seen things. Its expression is one of mild disdain, mixed with eternal resignation. It side-eyes you as you drop a sack slightly too hard, as if to say, "Amateur." The cart begins its slow creaky journey back through the city. The teen boy rides up front, half singing a tune about a jealous baker and a stolen fig. You walk behind, brushing barley hulls off your arms, absorbing the chaos of Babylon in full daylight. You pass a courtyard where a man is lecturing a group of students with sticks and clay tablets. One child is clearly asleep. A woman nearby slaps dough onto a flat pan while two toddlers try to ride a goat. You notice the same goat from earlier, the bread thief. It catches your eye and gives you a look of absolute guiltlessness. You round a corner and the bakery comes into view again, smoky, alive, homey, in its chaotic way. You've brought the grain. Someone takes the sack from you with a grunt of approval. The boy disappears with a casual wave. You stand there for a moment, arms tingling, unsure of what comes next. Then someone tosses you a barley cake, still warm, slightly scorched on one edge, but sweet with honey and herbs. You bite in, and your teeth sink into something surprisingly soft. That's when you spot a new delivery of date mash arriving, this batch visibly bubbling. You wonder again if anyone fully understands how yeast works. Or if, perhaps, the dough just knows. Either way, the bread will rise, eventually. And so will you, as someone beckons from the milling room, waving a heavy stone grinder and grinning like they're about to ruin your spine. Lucky you. You are not emotionally or physically prepared for the grinder. There it sits, squat and heavy like a miniature ziggurat, its edges worn smooth from decades of friction. It looks harmless enough, even kind of friendly, like a stone pet. You approach it with optimism, a mistake you will not repeat. The milling room is darker than the bakery, cooler too, but not in a relaxing way. More in the damp cellar filled with powdered ghosts kind of way. Every surface has a thin coating of flour, dust that refuses to settle. You breathe it in, you taste it. It has ... notes of chalk and regret. Sit, someone says, pointing to a low stool beside the grinder. It looks like it was designed for a child who misbehaved. You crouch, knees already cracking, and the stone slab is pushed toward you with ceremonial griminess. It's a saddle corn to heavy stones, one flat, one curved. Your job is to pour grain into the center. Then slide the top stone back and forth until what comes out looks vaguely like flour. That's it. That's the task. You begin on your first push. The stone doesn't move. You think it's stuck. It is not. You're just weak. You try again. This time it shifts, groaning faintly. A few barley kernels pop out the side like defiant little rebels. Someone snorts behind you. You're told to lean into it, and so, with a level of commitment that surprises even you, you throw your whole upper body into the task. There is an immediate betrayal by your lower back. Grinding grain, you quickly realize, is the unsung misery of the ancient world. Before mixers, before mills, before even the simple joy of using to rocks and a dream, this was it. Human labor. Hours of it. Daily. Often done by women and enslaved workers whose names we'll never know, but whose arms were likely carved from stone themselves. And here you are, grunting softly like a confused ox, dragging one rock over another while sweat drips into your eyes and a cat watches with polite disgust. Eventually, you start to find a rhythm. Push, pull, scrape. The barley cracks. The sound is gritty, satisfying in its own ancient way. Dust puffs up with every movement. You look like you've aged 40 years in 10 minutes. Someone walks by and mutters something that sounds like, "Don't sneeze or you'll be tasting flour until next week." You don't doubt it. Beside you, another worker uses a rotary cornanure contraption with a handle that spins a top stone in circles over a flat base. It's smoother, more efficient, and probably not going to throw your spine out of alignment. Before lunch, you eye it jealously, but there's a trick. The rotary ones often leave bits of stone grit in the flour. You're told, in hushed tones, that certain tooth were in ancient skeletons proves how many people chewed into their bread and got a mouthful of basalt instead. There's something deeply humbling about the idea of surviving floods, kings, and conquest only to lose your molars to breakfast. Eventually, your barley pile becomes something like flour, rough, coarse, but usable. You scoop it into a bowl with a flat wooden blade, careful not to spill because every grain is sacred, and also because you're pretty sure someone will throw a sandal at you if you waste any. A fly lands on your arm. You don't have the strength to shoo it. This room, this process, it isn't glamorous. It's the opposite of the warm bakery with its firelight and honey cakes. But it's the core. The quiet, repetitive heartbeat behind every fluffy loaf and crispy round. Without this dusty, thankless work, Babylon doesn't eat. One of the older women in the corner works with eerie calm. Her back is perfectly straight. Her movements are small and fluid, like she's done this so long that her muscles remember what her mind doesn't need to think about. She hums a song you don't recognize. It sounds older than the stones. There are stories etched in every motion here. You wonder how much life passed in these grinding rooms, how many whispered secrets, how many stolen glances, how many fingers calloused beyond recognition. Did they sing to distract from the pain? Did they teach their daughters how to balance rhythm and breath so they wouldn't pass out before the mid-morning break? Historians still debate how much of the flour production was communal, domestic, or institutional. Was it women grinding in their homes for family meals, or workers churning out daily quotas for temple rations? Probably both. The lines blur, much like your vision, as you wipe flour from your eyelids with a sigh. And the worst part, you're still not done. Your bowl is maybe 1/3 full, and someone gestures for you to keep going. You groan in a language older than cuneiform and brace yourself for another round. As you push the stone forward, your mind starts to drift. There's something almost meditative about the grind. Your breath matches the scrape. Your arms ache, but less with sharp pain now and more with a dull familiarity. You're a cog in the machine. A flour-covered, underpaid cog. But still, you start humming. The same melody the woman across from you hums. She looks up, doesn't smile, but nods, slightly. A moment later, the boy from earlier, your reluctant guide through Babylon's chaos, pokes his head in. He looks at your face, your arms, your flour-crusted clothes. He just laughs. "Break time," he says, and tosses you a ceramic cup filled with something brown and sweet. You sip it, date wine, possibly fermented, possibly just sugar water. You don't care. It's liquid and cold. You stand, knees cracking like old roof tiles, and stretch toward the low ceiling. Your spine thanks you with a series of alarming pops. You wonder how many ancient bakers walked like turtles by the time they turned 30. As you leave the milling room, light floods your vision again. The warmth of the sun, the tang of smoke, the scent of fresh dough. Someone calls you back toward the main room. Your flour is kneaded. You are, somehow, still part of this living, baking organism. And though your arms feel like overcooked noodles, there's something proud in your gait now. You carried the grain. You ground it into flour. You, a modern soul in ancient sandals, are helping feed an empire. Just don't sneeze. You carry your bowl of barley flour like it's a holy relic, walking carefully to avoid sudden movements, goats, small children, and the suspiciously damp patch near the entrance that nobody has explained. The flour clings to you, your tunic, your arms, probably your lungs. If you were a loaf right now, you'd be at the dusting before baking stage. Inside the main bakery, things have shifted. The dough table has been cleared, and now a wide circle of bakers huddles around a long, shallow trough that smells complicated, sweet, sour, a little like river mud, and just a hint of something floral. You're not sure whether to inhale deeper or back away slowly. Mixing time, someone says, and you're ushered into the ring. This is where the magic happens. Or the mayhem, depending on who's mixing. The water is drawn from deep stone cisterns, cool and fresh. It's poured over the flour with slow reverence, turning clouds of powder into a thick, sticky swamp of potential. You're handed a long paddle and told, simply, stir. So, you do. Your arms, already sore from the grinder, protest, loudly, but you stir anyway, dragging the wooden blade through what feels like wet cement. The others are mixing by hand, fingers plunging into the dough like sculptors shaping a statue that smells like beer and barnyards. Someone pours in date syrup, a thick, amber liquid that oozes like a lazy river. The scent shifts instantly. Sweetness, now, almost fruity, like someone dropped a fig into a loaf and whispered, "Live your dreams." This isn't just water and flour anymore. It's becoming dough. Elastic, alive. The conversation around the trough drifts from gossip to guesses how the weather will affect the rise, whether this batch will be soft enough to offer at the temple, and whether the new ferment starter will cause another incident. You wisely don't ask about the incident. They call the ferment sour mash, but don't mistake it for anything refined. It's a bubbling, sloshing paste that smells like overripe dates, damp wood, and possibly existential dread. It's kept in a sealed clay jar, which is opened only with great caution and a small ceremonial grunt. You watch as a baker scoops some into the dough with their bare hand. The dough accepts it like a sleeping creature rousing at a whisper. This is the mystery part. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians truly understood leavening as a process or thus treated it like a useful, smelly miracle. It's possible someone long ago left a bowl of dough out overnight, came back, saw it had puffed up like an arrogant frog, and decided, "This is good. Let's eat it." And humanity never looked back. The dough bubbles faintly, stretching and folding. In on itself, it smells better now, yeasty, a little tangy, like a good sourdough on a humid day. You press your palm into it gently. It pushes back. There's life in it, not metaphorical life. Actual, microbial life. You consider naming it. Someone sprinkles in a bit of ash. Yes, ash, from burned date pits, sometimes from wood, occasionally, even from dried animal dung. You raise an eyebrow. The woman next to you shrugs, adds texture. You make a mental note to never ask about texture again. The ash isn't random. It adds minerals, helps stabilize the dough, maybe even wards off spoilage. You'd question it more. But this is the same civilization that invented advanced math and complex legal codes. So, if they say a pinch of fire just makes the loaf better, you just nod and pretend you've always known that. Then come the herbs. A pinch of crushed coriander, some ground fennel, maybe even a dash of sesame if the bakery's feeling fancy. You see a baker sneak in a handful of crushed juniper berries, glancing around like they're committing a crime. You ask if that's allowed. Depends, they say. Is this loaf for the market, the temple, or the gods? You realize that even bread is subject to bureaucracy. Kneading begins. It's done on wide wooden boards dusted with flour and lined with deep palm impressions from decades, maybe centuries of use. You push the dough with your palms, fold it, turn it, press. Again, it's surprisingly satisfying. The dough stretches with a soft resistance, like a cat that isn't sure if it wants to be petted. And just like that, you're part of the process. Not watching anymore. Doing. A baker hums softly beside you. The same melody as before, you hum. 2. The dough size. Or maybe that's you. Eventually, the bowl is empty, the trough is scraped clean, and everyone steps back. The dough is set in deep ceramic basins, covered with cloth, and left near the warm oven walls to rest, to rise. To do what dough has done for millennia, you stare at it for a moment, quietly amazed. This lump of flour, water, ash, and old fruit. Juice is alive now. It's growing. Slowly, invisibly, wonderfully. It'll become a loaf, then a meal, maybe even a memory. It'll feed someone, fuel a worker, sweeten a ceremony, maybe even pay a debt, all from a messy, bubbling bowl. You stretch your fingers. Dough flakes fall away like snow. Someone hands you a small ball of leftover dough, wrapped in cloth. You're told to take it outside, bury it for tomorrow's starter. You walk to a quiet corner of the yard where the dirt is soft and the sun is just starting to peek above the garden wall. You kneel, dig, press the dough into the earth, and cover it again. Like planting a loaf-shaped seed. As you stand, your hands damp with soil and your face flushed with oven heat, you realize something. Bread is not just food here. It's ritual, labor, offering, courtesy, comfort, and tomorrow, it will start all over again. The oven growls before you ever see it. It's not a loud sound, more like a deep, ancient exhale. A steady breath of heat and smoke that wafts out in waves, curling around your ankles and up your spine, warming you with a not-so-subtle suggestion that you are about to sweat through your very soul. Then you see it. Or rather, them. The tan and yours. Set deep into the earth and built up with layered clay and ash. The ovens look like enormous upturned jars, tall, bulbous, cracked in places, yet somehow intimidating. They gape open at the top, glowing faintly from within, like prehistoric volcanoes preparing to devour tribute. And today, you are the tribute. You approach slowly, the air growing thick and syrupy. The scent is intense wood smoke, baking crust, a whisper of singed hair, not yours. Yet around the oven pits, a cluster of bakers works with alarming speed. One woman, her arms covered in scars and burn marks that somehow look like badges, grabs a flattened round of dough, weights her hands, and slaps it directly onto the inner wall of the tanner. It sticks, instantly, like it belongs there. You blink. Then another slap. Another loaf clings to the hot clay, puffing up at the edges like a golden bubble. Steam hisses as moisture meets fire. The smell, oh gods, the smell. You're hungry, and you didn't even know it until now. Someone hands you a wooden paddle. It is, frankly, the least reassuring tool you've ever seen. More stick than spoon, but apparently, you'll need it. Your job, manage the fire. You squat beside the tanner's base, where a small opening lets in air and radiates pure, vengeful heat. Inside, A fire of palm wood and dried reeds crackles, licking up the curved interior. Occasionally, someone tosses in a handful of dried date pits for flavor, or possibly to keep the fire gods entertained. The fire must be fed steadily, but not too aggressively. Too hot, and the bread blackens before it bubbles. Too low, and it turns into a sad, pale frisbee. You quickly realize the bakers here don't use timers or thermometers. They use instinct, experience, and the occasional sniff test. You watch as one of the senior bakers reaches into the oven opening with a soaked cloth, grabs a puffed-up loaf, and flips it out with casual precision. It lands in a basket, steaming. She doesn't flinch. Her hands are fireproof, or cursed. Possibly both. You, meanwhile, edge toward the oven with a piece of dough in hand. A young baker nods at you, gestures to the wall, and raises an eyebrow. You wet your hands, because otherwise, it won't stick, and cautiously, slowly, lean over the roaring mouth of the oven to press the dough inside. It clings. You do not. You stumble backward, gasping from the heat, arms tingling. The entire front of your tunic now smells like toast. The others laugh kindly, but with deep satisfaction. You've been initiated. A few moments later, your bread starts to rise. A bubble here, a darkening at the edge there. It's happening. You made this. Or at least, you didn't ruin it yet. You sit near the fire pit, nursing a light burn on your wrist with a cloth soaked in river water. It stings a little, but honestly, you feel proud. You just fed a Babylonian oven and survived. Now, as the room fills with baskets of fresh loaves, flat rounds, braided twists, discs punched with thumbprints, you begin to notice the variations. Not every loaf is the same. Some are scored with geometric patterns, some with dots or swirls, some shaped like small animals. You spot one that might be a turtle, or a very round cow. One of the bakers explains. Shape means status, or purpose. Some loaves are meant for everyday eating. Others are offerings. Some signal festival days. And some, like the wide flat kind, with tiny perforations, are designed to be soaked in beer. That's right. Beer bread. You mentally add that to your list of ancient things I didn't know I needed. Another baker sets a batch of loaves inside a long, low, domed oven, more like a communal baking tunnel. This one is fueled with dried dung and ash, producing a gentler, smoky heat ideal for slower baked breads. The smell is surprisingly pleasant, nutty, earthy, only slightly dung-y. At one point, a young apprentice leans too close to the oven and singes the tips of his hair. The head baker mutters something that you're pretty sure translates to "This is why we don't use perfume in the bakery." You're told about other types of ovens, 2 portable clay versions used by vendors, or stacked mud brick furnaces in royal kitchens. But this tanner, this is the heart of everyday Babylonian baking. And yet, it's not just about fire. It's about the timing, the smell, the feel. One of the older bakers gestures toward the sky. When the smoke rises straight, bread is near done, she says. You look up. Sure enough, the smoke changes thinner now, drifting rather than billowing. You pull your loaf from the wall with a long stick. It's uneven, a little burnt on one edge, a little raw on the other. Possibly shaped like Australia, but it smells amazing. You tear a piece, blow on it, bite. The crust crackles. The center steams. It's chewy and warm, with that perfect tang from fermentation, and a gentle sweetness from the date mash. You chew slowly, because this moment deserves that. Behind you, someone drops a tray. Loaves scatter across the floor. A goat materializes from nowhere and grabs one in its teeth, darting out the door, like a flour-covered thief. Nobody even tries to stop it. Just another day at the oven. You glance down at your hands, dusted, calloused, nicked by heat, and realize something strange. You feel content, exhausted, sweaty, slightly on fire, but deeply, quietly content. And the tanner, it growls again, waiting, because more dough is rising, and the fire never rests. By now, you've come to accept that Babylonian bread is not a singular thing. It's not even 10 things. It's more like an edible language full of dialects, inflections, and surprising accents. Bread that speaks in crunch, in chew, in steam, in spice. Bread that tells you if someone is a priest or a porter, a noble or a newlywed. Bread that, in a way, has a better social life than you. This morning's batch is lined up on cooling racks, flat rounds, puff domes, knotted ropes, stamped discs, and one suspiciously fish-shaped loaf that keeps deflating like it's emotionally exhausted. A baker gestures for you to follow. Time to sort, she says, and leads you to a shaded courtyard where a few dozen loaves are laid out like museum pieces. You're told to study them, not eat them. Yet first, the flatbreads. These are your basics, the dependable dailies. They're soft, sometimes blistered from the tanner wall, often sprinkled with sesame or a light brush of oil. Some are plain, some folded. Some have little pockets inside, accidental, maybe, but highly satisfying. These breads get dunked in stew, wrapped around pickled vegetables, or simply eaten with a smear of fermented bean paste. Next, the thick loaves. Dense, weighty, baked low and slow in the ash ovens. These aren't flashy, but they're filling and last for days. One baker taps a loaf with her knuckle, and it makes a satisfying thok. This one is made with coarse barley and bits of cracked emmer, which gives it a pleasantly toothy texture, assuming you still have teeth. There's also ninda, the ritual bread, highly stylized, sometimes shaped into animals, stars, or what might be a god's face or possibly someone's uncle. It's not always clear. These breads are often baked in molds, stamped with marks of ownership, and placed on temple altars. You touch one that's shaped like a lion's paw. It feels important. Then there's the festival bread. You know it the moment you see it. Round, braided, golden, and so shiny it's practically bragging, sweetened with honey, maybe even stuffed with dates or nuts. These are rare, special, eaten during weddings, feasts, or ceremonies where someone definitely ends up crying from joy, wine, or both. You're handed a small triangle-shaped loaf and told it's a seasonal bread for the moon festival, the baker says, or maybe the eclipse. She squints. Sometimes both. Depends who's in charge of the calendar. Historians still puzzle over this, why certain loaves only appear during specific times of year. Was it agriculture, astrology, politics? Or did someone just decide triangular bread was best enjoyed under a full moon? Either way, it's delicious. One baker sets a long, narrow loaf in your hands. It's airy, almost delicate, and filled with a layer of crushed lentils and herbs. You bite in, and your brain whispers, "Sandwich." You immediately want 3 more. You also learn these are baked for messengers, meant to be eaten on the road. Fast food, ancient style. Near the end of the courtyard, you find the oddballs. Mini loaves, the size of your thumb, crisp little crackers with holes poked in them. Bread shaped like birds, bread dusted with burnt onion. Bread so sour it makes your jaw twitch. Bread that tastes vaguely like cheese, though no cheese is present or admitted. A baker holds up a flat disc with a hole in the center. For hanging, he says, on a hook. No, he replies. On your donkey, he grins. Long trips, easy snack. You suddenly feel inferior to every donkey in Babylon. One of the most curious breads is called bapir. You're warned before you taste it. Twice. It's hard, like crackermolar hard. Made of barley, malt, and honey. Baked twice until it's basically edible stone. You try to bite it and feel your teeth file an official complaint. And yet bapir is vital. It stores forever. It's used in beer making. Some say it's a survival food. Others call it a punishment. You'd believe both. Throughout the morning, bread continues to pour out of the ovens and the tanners. There's no single, standard, no universal form. Some are made to be eaten hot. Others are stored for weeks. Some are salted, others sweetened, a few seasoned with wild herbs that only grow in the hills outside the city and smell suspiciously like oregano's ancient cousin. The variety is dizzying, but comforting, because here, bread isn't just one thing, it's everything. You think about your own world, your own grocery store bread aisle. So many loaves, and yet most of them kind of the same. Here, every loaf has purpose, a job, a personality, a name, even. Over 300 types. They say it seems impossible, but you believe it. You ask how they remember them all. Smell, says one baker. Feel, says another. Fear, mutters the apprentice. If you forget the priest's favorite loaf, you clean ash pits for a week. They're joking, probably. And then someone hands you a loaf that's still warm from the oven. It's round, with a soft crust and a pattern of dots, pressed into the top like constellations. No one says what it's for. Just that it's yours. You take a bite. It's simple, barely sweet, slightly nutty. It reminds you of the river, and the fire, and the sweat on your skin. It tastes like Babylon. And as you chew, surrounded by dozens of loaves and the bakers who made them, you finally understand. Bread isn't just something they make. It's something they are. The bread is everywhere now. It's cooling on clay racks, stacked in baskets, stuffed into slings and satchels, even tucked into folds of cloth like precious cargo. A few loaves are being carted away by vendors, who balance trays on their heads, with the grace of tightrope walkers. Others are loaded into wide reed boats, ready to float down the Euphrates like edible little emissaries. You're standing in the corner of the courtyard, holding a date-stuffed roll, so fresh it's still steaming. The air smells of crust and smoke and ash and sweetness. Your feet are sore, your eyes are itchy, and yet you feel oddly at peace. Maybe this is what contentment smells like. Slightly overbaked, with a hint of burnt sesame. Then someone says the word temple, and everything gets very serious. You're ushered toward a low side room, quieter than the rest of the bakery. The energy shifts here. People speak in hushed tones. Movements are slower, more deliberate. You duck under a narrow archway and find yourself in what can only be described as the holy bread zone. Here, the loaves aren't just food. They're offerings, messages, bribes for the divine. You glance around and immediately spot a table laid, with elaborate shapes, stars, animals, coils, crescents, each loaf more intricate than the last. Some are even dyed with saffron, with turmeric, with beetroot. They glow in shades of gold, crimson, and soft orange. They don't even look edible. They look sacred. A young baker stands beside a stack of small lion-shaped loaves and whispers, "These go to Ishtar's temple, for protection." She doesn't elaborate on what kind of protection. You don't ask. A quiet pride hums through this room. These are not mass-produced breads. These are intentional. Made in specific numbers, with exact ingredients, using molds and techniques passed down through generations. You notice one loaf has 13 distinct cuts on its top, perfectly symmetrical. You ask why. 13 temples. Someone answers, that makes sense. Probably. Another tray holds tiny round loaves with center holes. You ask if they're for donkeys again. A baker chuckles. No, these go on wooden rods. For burning. You pause. Bread. As incense. Apparently? Yes, burning bread was a common ritual offering. It sent the scent heavenward, a perfumed smoke trail for the gods. The sweeter the bread, the more pleasing the aroma. You can almost imagine a deity, perched high on their ziggurat throne, sniffing approvingly as breakfast wafts into the clouds. You help shape a few ceremonial loaves slowly, carefully, under supervision that borders on spiritual paranoia. One wrong twist, one uneven stamp, and you defend a god before lunchtime. No pressure. Some breads are shaped with symbols pressed into the dough. Sun rays, wings, eyes, even miniature tools. These aren't just decorations. They're prayers, requests, labels for divine delivery. There's even a whole category of temple bread known as nindagao, which roughly translates to great bread. It's not just big, it's majestic. A visual feast, often baked in grand molds, sometimes adorned with bits of dried fruit or tiny impressions of animals. These are baked for major feasts, celestial alignments, or when a priest wants to impress someone very high up celestially or politically. One such loaf is cooling nearby. It's the size of a pillow and shaped like a horned bull. It takes 3 people to move it. You watch in quiet awe as it's wrapped carefully in linen and placed on a ceremonial tray. You ask what happens if one of these ritual breads doesn't bake properly. There is a long silence. Then someone mutters, "It doesn't happen." You choose not to dig deeper. And then comes the priest. He's not what you expected. Younger, lean, robed in fine linen, but barefoot. He walks slowly through the courtyard, examining the offerings, occasionally dipping a finger into a cooling bowl of honey glaze. He nods once at the lion loaves, smiles slightly at the bull bread. He stops in front of one of your loaves, a small spiral you helped shape, carefully scored and brushed with sesame oil. You freeze. He tilts his head, leans in, and takes a breath. Then, without a word, he moves on. You exhale. Apparently, you pass the vibe check. Once approved, the loaves are packed into special reed baskets lined with cloth. Some are tied with dyed cords. Each bundle labeled with small clay tags impressed with cuneiform script, the ancient equivalent of shipping labels. Bread, by the way, is one of the earliest items recorded in writing. There are actual Sumerian tablets where someone basically said, 2 loaves went missing. Find them, you help carry a tray to the edge of the compound, where temple servants wait with donkeys, carts, and calm, inscrutable faces. You try to make eye contact. They stare at you like you're a particularly noisy pigeon. The bread is taken, loaded, and carted away. Just like that, it's gone, off to be eaten by priests, or burned in ritual, or left to mold on an altar as an eternal snack for an invisible god. No one seems entirely sure. You sit down on a small stool and stare at the empty tray. It's strange, isn't it? You worked your arms sore, squinted through smoke, watched dough bubble like breathing skin, and now it's gone, eaten, gifted, vanished into ritual. All that labor, just to be consumed or ignored. But you get it. You do. Bread is fleeting, and sacred, and ordinary, all at once. It can be both breakfast and offering, both hunger and holiness, both sacrifice and snack. You stand up again, brush crumbs from your lap, and stretch your arms toward the sky. Somewhere, bells ring. Somewhere, loaves burn. Somewhere, a goat is definitely stealing something important. And you have more dough to knead. The city is humming now. Late morning, maybe nearing noon. The light has sharpened bright, golden, just beginning to feel a little hostile. Babylon doesn't believe in shade as much as it believes in endurance. You wipe your forehead with a flour-crusted sleeve and glance up. The rooftops are bustling, people shouting, water being hauled, grain being spread out to dry. Laundry flaps like surrendered flags in the breeze. Somewhere, a rooster is absolutely losing its mind. You're told it's time for delivery. Bread doesn't just stay here. You see, it travels. It walks the city in baskets, on trays, under cloth wraps, in carts with squeaky wheels, and on heads balanced so perfectly you're starting to suspect necks were just built differently back then. You're handed a bundle wrapped in cloth, still warm, shaped like a fan of flattened discs stacked on top of each other, gently perfumed with anise and dates. This one's for the scrap quarter, someone says, shoving a small clay tablet into your hand. It's a delivery record. The text is pressed into the clay with sharp little wedge marks. It feels serious, like you are now responsible for something very bureaucratic and probably cursed. So off you go. The streets of Babylon are a maze of stone and dust, with alleys so narrow you sometimes have to walk sideways, but that just means more smells. You pass spice vendors, incense burners, sweaty workers, and that one dog who seems to think he owns your ankles. The bread begins to cool in your arms. The scent fades a little, replaced by the richer smells of the city dates fermenting in clay jars, fresh-cut reeds, river wine, and the occasional unpleasant waft from the tannery district. You hold your breath through that part. You pass the open courtyard of a school. Children are seated on mats, their instructors scowling and pointing at clay tablets. You hear a boy whisper, "What if the bread gets stolen?" Another hisses back, "Then the gods won't get lunch." You file that away as one of the greatest threats ever spoken. You arrive at the scrap quarter. It's quiet here. Not silent, but serious. The kind of quiet that smells like ink and hot dust. The buildings are taller, with shaded courtyards, and doors sealed with stamped clay seals. You knock. A man in a long robe with blue edging opens the door halfway. He says nothing. You hold up the bundle and the clay tablet. He nods once and takes both. The door closes. You stand there for a moment, holding nothing, and realize you don't even know what kind of bread that was, just that it mattered to someone. You wander. The next delivery is to the grain overseer, a grumpy man with the personality of an old sandal and a beard so thick it could smother a beetle in a thunderstorm. His loaves are dense, circular, and stacked in bundles of 3. You carry them on a board, both hands outstretched like an offering to a very unimpressed god. He grunts, accepts, tosses you a dried fig as thanks. You eat it. It's crunchy and oddly floral. Possibly fermented? Definitely not approved by any modern food inspector. As you walk, you learn to navigate the unspoken rules of Babylonian foot traffic. Carts get priority. Goats get free rein. Scribes move slowly. Bakers move fast. And if someone in ceremonial robes is carrying a bowl of fire, you move very far out of their way. You pass a woman selling bread by the street corner. Her loaves are smaller, hand-shaped, flecked with herbs. She winks and waves a sample in your face. You're tempted, deeply, but your pouch of currency consists of 3 lentils, a broken bead, and something that may have been a chickpea once. You nod respectfully and move on, dignity mostly intact. Your next stop is a family compound. Inside, a grandmother with cloud white hair accepts the loaves with a kiss to her fingertips and a small, folded cloth that she presses into your hand. It's a tip 2 figs, perfectly ripe, wrapped in a strip of palm leaf. You realize, quite suddenly, that figs might be your new favorite currency. Later, you're sent toward the market district with a basket of long, thin loaves. These are soft, almost spongy, and tucked carefully in layers with sprigs of fresh mint between them. You're told they're used for wrapping cheese, or stewed beans, or whatever else someone can fold and eat while yelling over fish prices. You reach the market square, just in time for a small commotion. A vendor is shouting, a donkey is braying, and 2 kids are arguing loudly over who stole whose date cake. You navigate the chaos like a true Babylonian, with one eye on your destination, one hand on your pouch, and no sudden movements. You drop the bread at the stall with a nod. The vendor nods back. No words, just mutual respect and a shared understanding of carbohydrate commerce. As the day stretches, your arms ache again. Your legs begin to drag, but your basket grows lighter. Your steps a bit surer. You've learned something essential. Bread is not static. It moves. It travels. It changes hands, changes homes, changes meaning. The same dough that rose in a dark corner of the bakery now rests in the hands of a priest, or a student, or a farmer on his lunch break. Bread connects people, not in the vague, poetic sense, but literally. You are walking the thread of that connection, delivering it, becoming it. You head back to the bakery just as the light begins to tilt. The sun sinks lower, casting long golden stripes across the clay walls. Your shirt clings to your back. Your hands smell of dough and dust and sweetness. You are tired. And yet. You catch yourself humming again. That same tune, the one the older bakers hum while they work. It's easy now, natural, like the city itself has folded you into its rhythm. You arrive at the bakery and drop your empty basket by the door. No one says anything. Someone just hands you a cup of water. Cool, earthy, like river stone. You sit in the shade, breathe in, and realize you could do this again tomorrow. Not because it's easy, but because it matters. The sun is slower now, dragging its golden limbs across the rooftops. Shadows stretch like sleepy dogs. You've eaten 3 loaves today, maybe 4, depending on whether that stolen corner of lentil bread counts as a full unit. Your arms are still tingling from the delivery circuit, and your legs have achieved a new and special kind of fatigue. But there's still work to do. Inventory, someone says, handing you a stylus and a fresh clay tablet. You blink at it. It's heavy, rectangular, soft enough to press into, and has the faint smell of wet dirt and anxiety. It's also one of the most important things in Babylon, more than the bread itself. Really, because in this world, nothing exists unless it's written down. Welcome to the bakery's beating heart, the records room. It's tucked behind the main baking chamber, cool and dark and lined with narrow shelves that hold hundreds of clay tablets, each etched with tiny cuneiform signs. Some are dusted with flour, others are bound in reed wrappings, labeled with tags like Ration, Third Moon, or loaves sent to Temple of Marduk. Discrepancy noted. There's something beautiful about it, in a bureaucratic kind of way. Here, bread is not just baked, it's counted, classified, filed, and stored in memory that cannot rot. You sit beside a wide, shallow table and watch as a scribe, sharp-eyed, calloused-fingered, suspicious of everyone, reads off numbers from the morning's production. He lists them with the enthusiasm of a man reciting poetry carved into a very dry stone. 25 flatbreads, sesame, 16 twisted barley, glazed, 8 temple loaves, bowl-shaped, reserved. 1 lost to goat. You pause. Lost to goat, he nods. Second this week. You press the wedge-shaped stylus into the clay and try your best to make sense of it. Cuneiform, inexactly forgiving. 1 wobbly line and you might accidentally change 10 loaves to sacrifice to oxen. The stress is not negligible. The scribe notices your expression. He shrugs. Everyone ruins a tablet their first week. One apprentice once recorded that we sent 50 loaves to the goddess of mud. What happened? You ask. He deadpans. We lost 50 loaves. The entire process is mesmerizing. For every batch of bread that leaves the oven, there's a tablet. For every delivery, a tag. For every sack of grain, a signed and sealed record. It's bread meets bureaucracy, and the paperwork is literally the size of dinner plates. And this isn't just bookkeeping, it's evidence. Some of the oldest writing ever discovered, thousands of years old, is just this: grain rations, barley ledgers, bread tallies. Civilization, for all its ziggurats and mythologies, really started because someone needed a receipt for lunch. Historians still debate just how centralized this system was. Did every bakery do this? Just the big ones? Was this mainly for temple economies, or private households, or somewhere in between? The tablets don't always say. Some were meant to be temporary, others permanent. You imagine some poor baker carving a rush order for 50 festival loaves, then immediately smudging it with his elbow. After you finish your section, the scribe takes the tablet and examines it like he's inspecting a suspicious fruit. You could be worse, he says. High praise. He sets the tablet on a sunlit shelf to dry. In a few hours, it'll be hard as stone. It might survive 1,000 years, or be smashed next week when someone drops a tray of lentil buns. Either way, it's done. And now you're on oat counting duty. A different record keeper brings out a pile of sacks, each marked with a seal. Pressed from a carved cylinder, you cut one open. The grain spills out in a soft cascade, pale gold, smelling of sun and storage. You dip your hands in warm, dry, endlessly satisfying. Like sand that wants to become bread, You count scoops into bowls, weigh them using small stone counterweights, and then note the totals on another clay tablet. There's a whole system here, an ancient algorithm of volume and weight and ratios. You learn the average loaf requires about 1/3 of a liter of grain. The average baker scoffs at this number and adds more for luck. Halfway through, someone spills a scoop of lentils into the oat bin. A small riot follows. Now it's oat-lentil blend. Someone says hopefully. No. The record keeper snaps. Now it's chaos. You're not allowed to help anymore. Eventually, you return to the records shelf and help stack today's finished tablets. Each one has a wet sheen, faint steam still rising from their soft surfaces. You arrange them carefully: deliveries, losses, production, temple rations, vendor allocations. One is labeled suspected theft, investigate. You try not to look directly at it. As you step back, the light from the doorway cuts across the shelves. The clay glows a soft orange. The room feels full of memory, of names and numbers, of flour and formality. You think about how much trust is placed in this system. How bread doesn't just pass from hand to hand, it passes through language, through numbers, through the quiet power of record. And yet, as much as is captured, you wonder what gets left out. The smell of the oven, the hum of a song, the laugh after a burnt loaf turns into lunch anyway. There's no section for that on the clay tablet. Still, you help press your final marks into the day's last ledger. A soft press, then another. It's oddly soothing, like pressing thoughts into earth. Outside, the shadows stretch longer. The day is shifting, slowing. And the ovens are lighting up again, because Babylon never sleeps, and neither does the bread. You're back in the courtyard, seated on a woven mat with your legs stretched out, ankles dusted in flour, arms covered in the abstract artwork of bread-making smudges, crusty fingerprints, and a faint burn that smells like pride. The bakery has shifted gears. The morning frenzy is gone, but the air is still alive. There's a soft clatter of tools being cleaned, a rustle of reed brooms sweeping the flour-dusted floor, and the gentle knock-knock of kneading boards being stacked. The tanners glow low now, not roaring, just purring with residual heat. It's break time. And around you, the bakers gather in a loose semicircle with bowls of stew, flatbread rolls, and cups of something that smells suspiciously like liquid decisions. You're handed a folded barley roll, still warm. Inside, mashed lentils, a few crunchy onion flakes, and a swirl of what might be tamarind or possibly someone's leftover spice experiment. You take a bite. Your mouth hums. It's earthy, salty, chewy, with just a hint of sweet at the edges, like someone whispered flavor, and the bread took it personally. A young apprentice passes you a clay cup filled with a foamy brown liquid. He grins. Try it. Beer. You hesitate. It's room temperature, mildly chunky, and smells like fermented hay, but you're committed now. You sip. It's not terrible, not great, kind of like oatmeal's rebellious cousin, but it's cold, it's real, and it makes the air feel just a little softer. Ancient Babylonian beer, and filtered, by the way. You're essentially drinking liquid bread. Historians agree it was a dietary staple, hydrating, nutritious, and probably how half the scribes got through inventory day without crying. Or maybe while crying. Hard to say. Someone begins to hum. That same low tune you've heard again and again, soft, repetitive, as natural as breath. You close your eyes for a moment. The sun is dipping, casting long golden slashes across the courtyard walls. A breeze stirs the hanging reed mats, cool and dusty. You feel, for the first time in days, maybe years, completely still. One of the elder bakers leans back on his elbows and starts telling a story. His voice is dry, scratchy, warm, something about a cursed loaf that refused to rise during a royal feast and was later buried in the orchard out of shame. You can't tell if it's true. Doesn't matter. It's delightful. Another baker chimes in. You think that's bad. Once, a goose flew into the tanner? Gasps all around. What happened? He shrugs. We served it. Best crust I've ever had. There's laughter low, tired, contagious. Even the grumpiest among them cracks a smile. You learn that every baker has a loaf they fear. For some, it's the long rise honey bread prone to collapsing dramatically at the last second. For others, it's the ceremonial swirl that always sticks to the mold no matter how much oil you use. One woman mutters, "No bread should squeak." No one asks her to elaborate. There's something beautiful in it. Really how this ancient, holy process still involves panic, mystery, and the occasional goose. You ask about the best loaf they've ever made. A man with sun-leathered hands and a soot-streaked cheek closes his eyes. Once, he says softly, on the third day of the flood month, I baked a sesame date spiral. The crust sang when you cracked it. Sang. He nods. Like tiny drums. You believe him completely. The conversation drifts into dreams. Not metaphorical ones, actual dreams. A baker mentions she once dreamed of bread that folded itself into birds. Another swears he saw God's face in the steam from a tanner. You admit that you've been dreaming of bread, too not fancy, prophetic bread, just warm, quiet, familiar. Someone hands you another roll. You don't ask what's in it. You eat it? It tastes like cinnamon and smoke and something oddly floral, maybe crushed rose petals. Or a mistake someone refused to admit was a mistake. You watch the others as they eat, leaning back against the oven walls, heads tilted toward the sky. There's a comfort in their silence, nothing to prove, nothing to chase. Just bread, and time, and a fire that always needs feeding. And somewhere, beyond the walls, the city still breathes. You can hear the distant clatter of market stalls closing, the low rumble of oxen carts making their final rounds, the faint jangle of bells from a passing procession. And underneath it all, the river murmurs a deep, steady whisper that says, keep going. You rise slowly, your joints protesting, and help collect the empty bowls and cups. The apprentice drops a spoon. It clatters. Someone steps on it. No one even flinches. It's that time of day when everything is funny, and nothing is urgent. A final loaf is pulled from the embers of a dying oven, charred just at the edges, caramelized at the seams. No one speaks. You tear it into pieces and pass them around. It's the best one yet. You're pretty sure no one remembers exactly how it was made. You ask what happens now. Someone shrugs. We'll start again, tonight, early, before the sun. Before the prayers, another adds, bread doesn't care if you're tired, and a third grins. Neither do donkeys. You nod, because they're right. Bread doesn't wait, and in Babylon, neither do the gods. It's deep dusk now. The sky above Babylon turns into an ancient bruised purple, bruised blue, streaked with that final gasp of orange before the stars take over. Lamps begin to flicker one by one along the narrow alleys. You hear the soft clink of copper against stone, the wet hush of water being poured into cooling jars. Somewhere, a lullaby drifts over from a rooftop. You're still in the bakery, but the world feels different now. It's quieter, gentler, like even the ovens are beginning to breathe slower. Someone hands you a fresh cloth and gestures toward a bench near the storeroom. It's cleaning time, but not the frantic, daylight kind. This is the ritual version, the slow scrape of dough off boards, the soft brushing of flour from corners, the rinsing of clay bowls with water that smells faintly of river reeds and ash. You kneel beside a large mixing basin and begin to scrub. The dried dough peels away like old paint. It's strangely satisfying, meditative. You fall into a rhythm. Dip, scrub, rinse, wipe, fold, breathe. Your mind starts to wander, but not in a chaotic way. It drifts, lazy and loose. You think about the hands that did this yesterday. And the day before that, you think about how the tools here, paddles, basins, baskets are older than some city walls. Passed down, worn smooth, still in use. A baker beside you hums a tune you don't recognize. It sounds like something meant for twilight low, looping, meant to be forgotten as soon as it ends. You join in, not with words, just with your breath. Together, you move through the motions of closing down the day. You stack boards against the far wall, you hang cloths out to dry. You sweep the last circle of flour from beneath the stone bench where the old woman always kneads with her eyes closed, like she's dreaming the bread into being. And then there's the tanner, still warm, still watching. You and another baker slide a heavy clay lid over its top. It lets out one last hiss, a breath of smoke like a dragon clearing its throat before bed. Someone pats it gently. Sleep, old friend, they whisper. You don't laugh, because you agree. You head to the grain room next. It smells like tomorrow, nutty, musty, full of the promise of dough not yet made. You help cover the jars, tie shut the sacks, mark the ledgers. Everything in its place. Everything ready to rise again. Historians still wonder how organized these bakeries really were. Were they part of the temple system, privately run, state-controlled? The records hint at all of the above. Maybe it changed over time. Maybe it changed depending on who was in charge, or how much barley was left after a rough harvest. But here, in this moment, the organization feels absolute. Not because it's efficient, but because it's loved. You finish your final chore by rinsing the ash from your hands in a wide bowl of scented water. It's been steeped with lemongrass and mint. The coolness makes you shiver. The scent is a lullaby for your fingertips. Someone sets out the night bread. Yes, there's night bread. Small, soft rolls flavored with herbs that calm the body. Chamomile, basil, even poppy. They're meant for the bakers. For sleep. For restoration. A kind of edible exhale. You take one and bite in. It tastes like soft pillows and memory. You lie back on the mat in the corner of the room, head resting against a folded cloth sack filled with millet. Someone dims the lamp near the door. The glow softens. The shadows settle. Outside, Babylon begins to whisper. The night vendors shuffle home. The temple drums fall silent. The goats, finally, stop shouting. For now. And within the walls of this flower, dusted sanctuary, a quiet pact is made. We made bread today. We fed the gods. We fed each other. And we'll do it again. The rhythm doesn't stop. It just rests. The way bread rests before it rises. You breathe out slowly. The floor beneath you is warm from the ovens. The ceiling is low, wooden, hung with drying herbs that sway slightly in the breeze from the open window. The scent of dill and thyme dances above you like old ghosts with good intentions. You hear the quiet rustle of someone setting out the morning starter. A tiny bowl of damp flour and water, seeded with wild yeast. It gurgles slightly in its clay jar, already alive, already preparing for tomorrow. You think of all the things that loaf will become. All the hands it will pass through, all the stories it will silently hold in its crust, and you smile, because here, in this quiet night, you are no longer just a visitor. You are part of the dough, part of the fire, part of the rising. Sleep tugs at your ankles. Warm and slow and ancient, you let it pull. You wake to the smell of smoke. Not the scary kind, the cozy kind. The intentional kind, like firewood and baking crust and the morning breath of a sleeping city rolling out its first yawn. It's barely light. The sky outside is the color of wet clay, with a faint glimmer of gold just barely fingering its way up past the rooftops. There's a soft blue hush over everything, as if the sun is still tiptoeing around, afraid to wake the chickens. You're already moving. You don't really remember standing up. Your body just knows now. Knees bend, arms stretch, hands reach for cloth and basin and dough. And sure enough, someone has already left a bowl out for you. The starter has tripled in size overnight. It's bubbling quietly, like it's been whispering dreams to itself while you slept. You dip your fingers in, still warm, still alive, still ready to become something. This morning's bake begins in near silence. No shouting, no rushing, just a gentle rhythm, the soft thump of dough hitting the boards. The stretch and fold and stretch again. the hiss of fire coaxed back to life, the whistle of steam escaping a warming tanner. You're asked to shape rolls today. You do. Without question. No hesitation. Your hands move the way the older bakers taught you. You pinch the ends. You smooth the tops. You press your thumb, just lightly into the center of each roll, not enough to mark it, just enough to give it breath. The baker beside you grunts. You're better, he says. Not with enthusiasm, just acknowledgement. You smile. You don't need applause. You've joined the rhythm now. This morning's dough is different, richer, darker, a new blend of barley and spelt. You ask about it. A young apprentice shrugs. Old barley ran out. New shipment came late. She grins. This one makes the bread chewy, like arguing with a friendly brick. You nod. You understand. Ingredients shift. People adapt. The bread, like the city, survives by improvising. You help build the morning batch. Flatbreads with pressed herbs, thick loaves for temple workers, slender travel bread for messengers, a curious square loaf filled with crushed apricots and apparently bitter. Cucumber. You raise an eyebrow at that last one. It's an acquired taste. Someone mutters. You make it anyway. There's something comforting about doing it all again. Not boring. Not repetitive. Just right. Like humming the same song you loved yesterday. The tanners light one by one. Not with firewood today, but with dried dung patties. You flinch a little. It smells unique, but you're told it's hotter and more efficient, plus sustainable. Ancient green energy, right. You feed a new round of dough into the tanner, flattening it against the hot clay wall with quick, confident hands. You don't burn your fingertips this time. Progress. One of the older bakers claps you on the shoulder. Want to help with the bread dye? Wait, there's dye. Apparently so. You're led to a low table near the back of the bakery, where several small bowls hold vivid paste, deep yellow from turmeric, pale green from crushed nettle, red from beetroot. Each one gets brushed lightly onto specific ceremonial breads, not for taste, but for symbolism. Yellow means sun, says the baker. Green means new grain. Red means blood. You pause, not like violent blood. She adds quickly, just lifeblood. Cycle of the fields? Harvest? You know, you don't, but you nod anyway and start painting. The colored dough bakes into vibrant designs, rings, rays, patterns like crop rows. You can't help but admire how much art goes into something meant to be torn apart and eaten. You ask if people ever hesitate to eat the really beautiful ones. A baker shrugs. Sometimes, but that's what makes it special. It's beautiful because it goes away. You chew on that figuratively. For now. Later, you're handed a tray of what look like miniature pillows, soft rolls stuffed with something sweet. You taste one. It explodes with honey and fig. You make a noise you've only ever made in the presence of truly excellent desserts. Someone laughs. These are new, the baker says. A scribe's wife asked for them. Special request, said they help with digestion. You're on your fourth one, before realizing you might have just eaten an ancient laxative. No regrets. As the sun climbs higher, the baker bursts into full motion. The courtyard fills again. Apprentices rush deliveries to the temple. Vendors arrive with long trays and louder voices. A goat gets chased off with a stick again. The smell of burnt flour, yeast, and victory fills the air, and just like that, you forget what time it is. Because in the bakery, time doesn't move in hours or bells. It moves in batches. And rises and bakes and burns and rests. You realize you haven't looked at the sky in a while. Haven't thought about what came before this, or what comes next. You've just been here, with the bread, with the fire, with the people who shape both, and when someone calls your name, not your real one, but the nickname they gave you yesterday, you answer without thinking, because it's yours now, because you belong. You're rolling lentil dough into ropes when someone yells, "Festival batch incoming." There's a brief, stunned silence, then chaos. Bakers scatter like startled pigeons. Someone trips over a grain sack. A bowl of date paste goes flying. The tanners were higher. Even the goats look alarmed and, that's saying something. You drop your dough and follow the stampede to the outer courtyard where a young boy, panting and wild-eyed, holds out a clay tablet like it's been dipped in lightning. It's an order. A big one. A temple feast honoring the goddess Nanaya, last-minute celebration because, apparently, the high priest saw a shooting star and interpreted it as a divine craving for carbs. You don't question it? You grab a bowl and start mixing. Festival bread is different. It's more than food, it's performance. You shape it with precision, flair, maybe a little unnecessary drama. These are not your standard morning rolls. These loaves are works of edible architecture. There are spirals, plaits, stars, and one terrifyingly detailed loaf shaped like a lion midroor. Why the lion? You ask. Nanaya likes lions, the head baker says, or hates them. The records aren't clear. The ambiguity does not make the task easier. You're assigned to the sweet team. Your job: decorate festival. Cakes made from semolina and honey, topped with sugared dates and crushed almonds. You press patterns into the tops using carved wooden stamped stars, zigzags, something that might be a stylized river or a very confused fish. As you work, someone beside you explains the symbolism. This pattern here, that's for fertility. This one's prosperity. That one ... She squints. ... Might be a warning about taxes. Historians still puzzle over these decorative codes. Were they spiritual symbols, instructions, kitchen gossip? The tablets are silent, and the bread, tragically, doesn't talk back. The mood in the bakery changes as the festival loaves take shape. There's urgency? Yes, but also excitement, energy, like everyone stepped onto a stage and the curtains about to rise. And with the flour flying and the ovens blazing, the stories begin. Last year, someone says, they sent a tray of festival loaves to the wrong temple. Ended up offering Nanaya's lion loaves to Ea, god of water. He got indigestion, laughter. Once, someone else adds, a priest spit into a ceremonial roll and cracked a tooth on an olive pit. Declared it a divine omen. What happened? They canceled taxes for 3 days. You marvel at how much power bread holds here. It's not just food, it's a message, a metaphor, a middleman between humans and the sky. You help shape a special type of festival roll, small, puffy, filled with chopped herbs and smoked cheese. The smell alone could lift a sun god out of bed. They're wrapped in reed leaves, tied with colored twine, and brushed with oil until they shine like tiny golden moons. A team of apprentices begins assembling the final trays. Each one is arranged with military precision. Large loaves in the center, rolls in rings, sweets at the corners, sprigs of fresh herbs tucked in for scent and flair. Someone runs through the checklist aloud. Lion loaves. Check. Star rolls. Check. Date spirals. Check. Cinnamon bricks. Wait. Who authorized cinnamon bricks? A shrug. They're new. They look like punishment. You sneak a bite of one. It's surprisingly soft, warm, a little aggressive on the spice, but you respect the boldness. As the trays are completed, they're loaded onto carts lined with cloth and straw. You're chosen to help carry the centerpiece, a massive sun-shaped bread as wide as your arms can stretch, made from layers of flaky dough and stuffed with saffron rice, pistachios, and chopped apricot. It weighs as much as a small goat. You walk, carefully, reverently, sweating and grinning and praying that you don't trip and become a cautionary tale. You arrive at the temple just as the musicians begin to warm up. Flutes trill, drums thump, bells chime in that offbeat way that tells you this is not a rehearsal, it's the real thing. The high priest appears, robed in gold-threaded linen, hands raised in welcome. He nods at the loaves. The sacred bread arrives. You resist the urge to curtsy. The trays are presented with ceremony. Incense is lit. The breads are arranged on low stone tables beneath carvings of Nanaya smiling, mysterious, surrounded by lines and stars. The air smells of sandalwood and honey and ambition. You watch as the priest performs a slow, practiced blessing over the offerings. He waves a fan of palm leaves, sprinkles water, mutters words you don't understand but feel anyway. Then he picks up a spiral roll. He breaks it open. Steam rises. He eats. He chews. You hold your breath. He swallows. He smiles. Acceptable, he says. You exhale so hard you almost fall over. The crowd cheers. Musicians play louder. Dancers spin. Children dart between tables, snatching bread fragments like it's a sacred game. And you, for a moment, just stand there watching your bread become part of something larger than survival. It's celebration. It's tradition. It's joy. Later, someone hands you a piece of sun bread. You bite in. It's soft, sweet, bright, with fruit and saffron. You feel it in your chest, like a tiny fire. Someone beside you murmurs, "We bake so the gods will remember us." You chew and nod. You understand. You're back at the bakery. Shoes dusty, eyes full of firelight, fingers sticky with festival crumbs. It's late. Really late. The kind of late where even the stars are blinking slow, like they're falling asleep on their watch. Babylon has quieted again. The celebrations have faded into tired music, scattered laughter, and the soft clunk of carts rolling home with their last empty trays. You're exhausted but glowing. Someone tosses you a damp cloth. Wipe your face. You look like a honey accident. You do. You absolutely do. But you don't care. Tonight, you've seen bread not just as food, or duty, or even art, but as something sacred. You helped make offerings. You fed gods. You fed joy. You watched the city pause, gather around the same table, and rise again. Back inside, the bakery is nearly empty. Just a few flickering lamps and the gentle creak of cooling clay. And then you notice something new. In a small alcove near the rear wall, half hidden by reed mats, you see a shelf. Nothing fancy, just a wooden plank balanced on clay bricks. But the loaves sitting there aren't like the others. They're small, rough, a bit lopsided. One looks like it tried to be a star, but gave up halfway and settled for an enthusiastic blob. You point. What are those? A baker grins. Ah, the apprentice shelf. You're guided over gently, reverently. The loaves are arranged like little museum artifacts. Every new baker makes one, they explain. First solo loaf. Doesn't matter how it turns out. We save it. We let it dry. We keep it forever. You look closer. Each loaf is different. Some are cracked, others perfect. A few are painted, others branded with thumbprints, seals, even poetry scratched into the dough. This one, your guide says, tapping a near-charred triangle, was made by a man who now bakes for the palace. That one was from a girl who left to herd sheep. Still sends us cheese. You run your hand over the shelf edge. So, where's mine? He grins. Tomorrow. Something shifts in your chest. Not pressure. Belonging. You're ushered over to the flower bench, quiet, unused for hours, and handed a bowl. Just one. Inside, a scoop of barley, a pinch of salt, and a bit of starter from today's sacred batch. You look at it. You feel weirdly nervous, like you're being asked to propose to someone. But the answer is always going to be yes. You mix the ingredients slowly, no rush. The others are watching, not judging, just bearing witness. A soft, sleepy kind of ceremony. The dough forms. It's sticky, slightly too wet. Your fingers fumble. You start to knead and hear someone hum that same low tune again. You fall into rhythm. Fold, turn, press, breathe. It comes together. Imperfect, lumpy, honest. You shape it not into a star, or a lion, or anything majestic, just a round loaf with 3-finger dents across the top, like the marks of a hand reaching forward. You hold it up. The baker nods. It'll dry by morning. We'll add it to the shelf. You set it down, gently. And for the first time, you see yourself in the bread, not metaphorically, not poetically, literally. your fingers, your rhythm, your story. And it's part of Babylon now. You help bank the tanners for the night, pressing clay lids into place. The embers sigh as if relieved to rest. Someone hangs the used cloths to dry. Someone else carries out the scrap dough to feed the temple pigs. Yes, sacred pigs. Don't ask, it's complicated. One baker lights a tiny cone of incense and sets it on the edge of the courtyard. A final thank you, a closing note. It smells like myrrh and rain and the hush that comes just after a fire dies. Before bed, someone brings out a worn tablet, not for record keeping, not for orders, a story. They read it aloud, voice soft as flower dust. A woman once baked a loaf so fragrant that a god came down from the sky and asked for just a bite. She gave him the whole thing. He vanished. Her house smelled like bread for 30 years. No one claps, they just smile, because the story is enough. You lie down once more, on your mat in the corner. Same millet sack pillow, same herb hung ceiling, but something's changed. The smell of your loaf is still in the air. You drift off slowly. As you fade, you imagine future bakers years from now. New hands, new shapes, new songs. You wonder if they'll touch your loaf on the shelf. If they'll laugh at the shape. If they'll see the thumbprints. If they'll feel the same belonging you feel now. You hope they do, because bread, like memory, rises best when shared. The sky is soft pink now. You wake to quiet. No shouting, no clanging bowls, no rushing apprentices trying to out-jog a goat. Just the rustle of wind through the reed shutters and the rhythmic chirp of something small and winged announcing the day. Your back is stiff. Your face is crusted with a little flour. Your loaf is dry. Perfect. You rise slowly, carefully, like a person who's aged 3 decades overnight, which, in bakery years, might actually be true. You stretch, yawn, and immediately trip over a basket of onions. A familiar voice says, "Nice form." You bow, as sarcastically as your sore joints will allow, and shuffle toward the courtyard. The bakery's already moving again. Of course it is. There are 2 kinds of rest in Babylon, naps and reincarnation. Everything else just keeps going. You pass the apprentice shelf and see your loaf resting there proudly among the others. It's hardened now, sealed by the dry air and time, your 3-fingered dent still pressed clearly into its crust. Someone scratched your name under it. Well, not your actual name, but the nickname they gave you, which now feels more real. You smile, but the day doesn't pause to let you admire yourself for too long. Today's bread is already being kneaded. This morning is different, though, slower, lighter, no festivals, no rush orders, no temple crises or prophetic loaves required, just a calm, regular baking day. You step into it like a warm bath. Your first job is flour sifting. You shake a wide reed basket gently, and the fine powder falls like desert snow. It catches the light in slow, golden clouds. You can see every particle of it dancing. Next, you help with the starter. You recognize its smell now, funky, tangy, like something alive and deeply wise. You mix it into warm water, add barley, and begin to stir. Someone passes by and calls your mix optimistic. You decide to take it as a compliment. You carry a bowl of new dough to the resting bench and gently cover it with damp cloth. There's something satisfying about it. Like tucking in a sleeping child. You've noticed something, too. The way this place teaches you without lectures. Just repetition, rhythm, gentle nudges and raised eyebrows. No one ever gave you a rule book, but somehow you know more than you did. Like, which baker likes their loaves just underdone? Like how the tanners make different sounds when the bricks are too hot. Like, which of the goats can open the grain bin with their teeth? Some knowledge, sadly, comes with scars, but you've earned them. Mid-morning, you and a few others are sent out for delivery. Just a short 3 temple loaves, 1 basket of sweet rolls, and a tray of coin-sized flatbreads with caraway. You walk the streets, with bare feet and a full heart. Babylon is waking slowly, Merchants yawn behind their stalls. Children chase each other around clay water jars. A woman sweeps the same 3 feet of her doorstep with aggressive purpose. You pass an old man singing to his donkey. The donkey seems unimpressed. You deliver the bread. You receive thanks. A nod, a slice of melon dot on the way back. Someone offers you a fig for free. You think it might be because you smell like cinnamon and competence. Back at the bakery, cleanup begins early. One of the ovens cracks a little, just a surface split, but everyone gathers around like a beloved uncle just sneezed hard. A decision is made to let it rest today. The other ovens will carry the load. The tanner gets a blessing and a gentle pat. You find yourself whispering, "Hang in there," as if it's a live dot, and maybe, in a way, it is dot as the afternoon light starts to turn golden. You kneel beside your favorite dough bench and begin shaping small barley rounds. You do it slowly, thoughtfully, no rush. Just the press, fold, turn, press again. Each loaf a quiet poem in your hands. Someone plays a simple drum beat on a clay jar. Another hums. A third starts reciting a recipe like it's a love letter. Barley, for parts. Water, just warm. Salt, like a whisper. Oil, if you have it. Time, always. You wonder how many bakers, across how many generations, have shaped loaves to this exact rhythm. How many hands repeated the same steps? How many silent fingerprints pressed into clay, now long vanished, but still, somehow here, you hear laughter. At the other end of the courtyard, a goat escapes. Someone screams. Balance is restored. You finish the batch and lay the loaves gently near the warmest part of the oven, not in it, just close enough to let them dream of heat. The air smells of flour, ash, sweat, and joy. You step outside and watch the sun sink behind the rooftops again, one full circle, and you are here for all of it. From chaos to ceremony, from midnight kneading to moonlit cleaning, from your first clumsy fold to your proud little loaf on the shelf. You've seen how Babylon eats, how it works, how it worships dot, and through it all, how it rises slowly, steadily, like dough that refuses to stay flat. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you let the moment settle in your bones. Asterisk, asterisk, let yourself sink a little deeper now. There's nothing left to do. The ovens have cooled, the bowls are clean. The last roll has been wrapped in linen and tucked gently into a basket for tomorrow's market. Your hands are warm, your chest is steady, and your breath, if you listen closely, moves like rising dough, slow, expanding, soft. You're lying back on your mat one final time. The sounds of the bakery hush now, like old friends falling asleep mid-conversation. A broom leans in the corner. A pot simmers low somewhere nearby, not because anyone's hungry, just because comfort should always have a scent. You let your thoughts drift, no direction, no effort. Just like flour, lost in a sunbeam. Out in the courtyard, the stars return, quietly, no fanfare. Just little pricks of light reminding you that even the sky bakes and cycles. The moon is high now, pale, and round like the top of a perfectly proof loaf. You watch it through half-closed eyes, and it watches back. There's no need to hold on to anything. Not the tools, not the tasks, not even the stories. They're all still here, woven into the walls, pressed into the bread, rising gently in memory. You are part of something now. Ancient, soft, warm, and constant. The fire rests, the city exhales, and so do you. Feel your shoulders drop. Let your hands go still. Let your breath stretch a little longer with every exhale. The world turns quietly, and you, little baker of Babylon, have earned your place in the rhythm. Dream of ovens glowing beneath a starry ceiling. Dream of soft loaves rising on stone benches. Dream of laughter, of sacred bread, of the life you've kneaded into shape with your own hands. It's all here, right here. Sleep now. Sleep deeply, sleep warm.